What would you do if a single act of cruelty unraveled a web of secrets that could destroy everything you thought you knew? In the small, sleepy town of Willow Creek, where the air carried the scent of pine and the weight of unspoken grudges, a single night by a fire pit changed lives forever. It was a night of laughter and warmth, until it wasn't a night where Karen, a woman with a sharp tongue and sharper ambitions, made a choice that would haunt her. This is the story of betrayal, power, and the bitter cost of underestimating those you think you know. Karen was the kind of woman who walked into a room and demanded attention, not because she was beautiful though she was, but because she wielded her confidence like a blade. At 32, she had a knack for turning heads and breaking hearts, her laughter loud and her opinions louder. She was the assistant manager at the local bank, a position she wore like a crown, always reminding everyone she was destined for bigger things. Her sister, Emily, was her opposite. Quiet, thoughtful, and tethered to their aging mother, Margaret, who relied on a cane to navigate the world. Margaret's arthritis had worsened over the years, and the cane carved with intricate floral patterns by her late husband was more than a tool. It was a piece of her soul. The family gathered that autumn evening at Emily's modest home, the backyard glowing under strings of fairy lights. The fire pit crackled, casting shadows on the faces of cousins, aunts, and neighbors who sipped cider and swapped stories. Karen, as usual, held court, her voice cutting through the chatter as she mocked Emily's boring life and Margaret's old-fashioned ways. Emily, ever patient, smiled tightly, while Margaret sat quietly, her cane resting against her chair, her eyes distant but sharp. "Why do you even keep that thing, Mom?" Karen said, her tone dripping with disdain as she pointed at the cane. "It's practically a relic. You should get one of those sleek aluminum ones. Modern, you know?" The crowd chuckled, but Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. Emily shot Karen a warning glance, but Karen, emboldened by the wine and the attention, wasn't done. "I mean, really," she continued, standing now, her silhouette framed by the fire. "It's just wood. It's not like it's magic." And then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Karen grabbed the cane, twirled it like a baton, and tossed it into the fire pit. The crowd gasped, then fell silent as the flames devoured the carved wood, the floral patterns curling into ash. Margaret's face crumpled, her hands trembling, but Karen just laughed. "See? Nothing special." Emily lunged forward, trying to snatch the cane from the flames, but it was too late. The wood crackled and popped, consumed by the fire. "Karen, how could you?" Emily's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. Margaret said nothing, her gaze fixed on the fire, but the pain in her eyes was a language of its own. The party ended abruptly, guests shuffling out with awkward goodbyes. Karen, unfazed, shrugged it off. "It's just a stick, Em. Don't be so dramatic." But Emily's heart burned hotter than the fire pit. She drove Margaret home, her mother's silence heavier than words. That night, Emily made a call, one she hadn't made in years. It was to her Uncle Richard, a man the family rarely spoke of, not because they didn't love him, but because his world seemed so far from theirs. Richard was a state senator, a powerful figure whose name carried weight in the halls of government, a man who moved in circles Karen could only dream of. Richard arrived the next morning, his polished suit a stark contrast to the small-town backdrop. He was in his 60s, with a kind face but eyes that could pierce steel. He hugged Margaret, who finally let her tears fall, and listened as Emily recounted the night's events. "She didn't just burn a cane," Emily said, her voice trembling with rage. "She burned Mom's memories. Dad made that for her. It was all she had left of him." Richard nodded, his jaw tight. "Karen's always been reckless," he said. "But this crosses a line." He didn't say much more, but Emily saw something shift in his expression, a quiet resolve that sent a chill down her spine. Richard wasn't just family. He was a man who knew how to pull strings, and Karen had no idea who she'd crossed. Days passed, and Karen continued her life, oblivious to the storm brewing. She strutted through the bank, flirting with clients and planning her next move to a bigger city, a bigger life. But whispers began to spread. The bank's regional manager, a man who'd always favored Karen, suddenly grew cold. A promotion she'd been promised was quietly given to someone else. Her car was towed for unpaid tickets she swore she'd never received. Her landlord, citing violations, threatened eviction. Karen laughed it off at first, blaming bad luck, but the pressure mounted. Then came the twist no one saw coming, not even Emily. A man named Tom, a quiet regular at the bank, approached Karen one morning. He was in his 40s, unassuming, with glasses that always slid down his nose. Karen had barely noticed him before, dismissing him as just another small-town nobody. But Tom wasn't nobody. He was a private investigator, hired by Richard to dig into Karen's life, and what he found was a bombshell. "Ms. Karen," Tom said, his voice calm but firm, "I know about the accounts." Karen's smile froze. "What accounts?" she asked, her voice sharp. Tom slid a folder across her desk, filled with documents detailing transactions she'd thought were buried small. Clever transfers from clients' accounts to her own, disguised as fees. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to ruin her. "You've been skimming," Tom said, "and Senator Richard knows." Karen's world tilted. She stammered, tried to laugh it off, but Tom's gaze was unrelenting. "He's giving you a choice," Tom continued. "Resign quietly, leave town, and this stays between us. Or he sends this to the authorities." Karen's bravado crumbled. She'd underestimated everyone: Emily's loyalty, Margaret's strength, and Richard's reach. She'd thought she was untouchable, but she was just a small fish in a pond she didn't understand. The next day, Karen was gone. Her desk at the bank was cleared out, her apartment empty. Rumors swirled, but no one knew the full story except Emily, Margaret, and Richard. Emily expected to feel triumph, but instead, she felt hollow. Karen was her sister, after all, and the betrayal stung both ways. Margaret, though, found a quiet strength. Richard had a new cane made for her, not a replacement but a gesture, carved with stars instead of flowers, a reminder that she could shine through pain. But the story doesn't end with Karen's departure. Months later, Emily received a letter, postmarked from a city far away. It was from Karen, and it wasn't what Emily expected. "I'm sorry," it began, the words shaky, as if written through tears. Karen wrote of hitting rock bottom, of losing everything, but also of finding something new: a small job at a community center, where she helped people who'd lost more than she ever had. "I didn't know what that cane meant," she wrote. "I didn't know what family meant. I'm trying to learn." Emily read the letter by the fire pit, now cold and unused. She wanted to forgive, but the hurt was still raw. Margaret, sitting beside her, took her hand. "She's learning," Margaret said softly. "That's more than some ever do." But Emily couldn't bring herself to write back, not yet. The fire pit, the cane, the family, they were all scars now, and scars don't heal overnight. Richard never spoke of what he'd done, but Emily saw the weight in his eyes. Power, she realized, wasn't just about pulling strings. It was about knowing when to stop. Karen's fall was a lesson, but it was also a wound, one that left their family fractured. The fire pit stood as a silent reminder of that night, of choices made and bridges burned. In the end, Karen's ambition had been her downfall, but it was her ignorancy of family, of love, of the quiet strength in those she dismissed that truly broke her. Emily and Margaret moved forward, their bond stronger but tinged with sorrow, and Karen, somewhere out there, was rebuilding one painful step at a time. But the cost of that night by the fire pit lingered, a bitter truth no one could escape. Some things, once burned, can never be reclaimed. ND.